Everyone assumes heartbreak announces itself. They imagine raised voices echoing through walls, doors slammed hard enough to rattle windows, or a final argument so explosive it leaves no doubt that something has ended. We are taught to recognize pain only when it is loud and undeniable, but no one prepares you for the kind of heartbreak that whispers, the kind that settles quietly between two people who still share the same roof, the same routines, the same bed. This is the kind of heartbreak that doesn't shock you all at once. It arrives slowly, almost politely, asking for permission before it takes anything away. It comes disguised as tiredness, as stress, as the normal wear and tear of adult life. You tell yourself this is what long-term love looks like. You convince yourself that calm means stability, and silence means peace. At night, two bodies lie side by side, close enough to touch, yet separated by miles of unspoken thoughts. There are no dramatic confrontations, no ultimatums. Instead, there is the steady hum of distance growing louder each day. Conversations shorten, laughter becomes rare, eye contact feels unfamiliar, almost intrusive. You begin to miss someone who is right next to you. From the outside, everything looks fine. Friends admire your consistency. Family praises your commitment. Social gatherings are filled with polite smiles and rehearsed stories about work, plans, and shared goals. You play your part well, convincing everyone else and slowly, yourself that nothing is wrong. After all, nothing has visibly fallen apart. But inside, something essential is eroding. It's not anger that hurts the most. It's indifference. It's the moment you stop asking how their day really was. The moment you stop sharing your own fears because it feels easier to keep them locked away. The moment you realize that being understood feels like a memory instead of a present reality. I used to believe heartbreak was a single moment, a clear before and after line in your life. I thought it would come with certainty, with a decision that could be explained in one sentence. But this heartbreak was confusing. It had no clear beginning. It blended seamlessly into everyday life, making it hard to point at and say, this is where everything went wrong. There were days when I blamed myself entirely. Maybe I wasn't attentive enough. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe love is supposed to feel this heavy after enough years pass. I replayed old memories in my mind, searching for the exact mistake that broke us, hoping that if I could name it, I could fix it. Other days, I told myself this was just a phase. Every marriage goes through quiet seasons, people said. Passion fades, routines take over, and that's normal. I clung to those words because they gave me permission to ignore my unease. They allowed me to stay still instead of asking difficult questions. But silence has a way of demanding attention, even when you refuse to listen. It shows up in small moments when you hesitate before sharing good news, when you feel alone even during shared meals, when your thoughts feel heavier at night because there's no safe place to release them. These moments pile up, quietly, relentlessly. The strangest part was how functional everything remained. Bills were paid, responsibilities were handled, schedules were coordinated with efficiency. We worked together like colleagues managing a shared project. And in many ways, that made the pain worse. There was no obvious crisis to point to, no disaster that justified the emptiness I felt. I started to realize that heartbreak doesn't always come from cruelty or betrayal. Sometimes it comes from neglect, unintentional, gradual, mutual neglect. Two people trying their best, yet slowly failing to truly see each other. Two people so focused on surviving life that they forget how to live it together. There is a particular loneliness that exists only within relationships. It's different from being alone. It's heavier, because you are constantly reminded of what connection should feel like. You sit across from someone who knows your history, your habits, your family, yet feels emotionally unreachable. That contradiction eats away at you. At times, I wondered if I was imagining it. Maybe I was expecting too much. Maybe wanting emotional closeness was unrealistic or selfish. I questioned my own needs, shrinking them down until they felt easier to ignore. It seemed safer to doubt myself than to risk disrupting the fragile balance we had. Night after night, I lay awake next to my wife, listening to the familiar rhythm of her breathing, feeling more distant than ever. I wanted to reach out, to say something honest and vulnerable, but the words felt dangerous. What if I said too much? What if I said it wrong? What if speaking the truth made everything collapse? So I stayed quiet. And she did too. Not out of malice, but out of fear, exhaustion, and learned habits. We both carried unspoken worries, assuming the other wouldn't understand, or worse, wouldn't care. In trying to protect the relationship, we were slowly suffocating it. There were moments of hope, brief flashes when things felt lighter, a shared joke, a calm evening, a sense that maybe we were finding our way back. Those moments kept me going, even as the overall pattern remained unchanged. They were enough to delay action, enough to keep the truth at bay. I began to realize how easy it is to confuse longevity with health. Just because something lasts doesn't mean it's alive. Just because two people stay together doesn't mean they are growing together. Stability can be comforting, but it can also become a cage when it replaces emotional honesty. The hardest realization wasn't that my marriage was hurting, it was that I was disappearing inside it. I no longer recognized my own emotional responses. I felt numb more often than sad. I stopped dreaming, stopped imagining a future that felt emotionally rich. I was present physically, but absent from myself. Love, I learned, doesn't always fail dramatically. Sometimes it fades quietly while everyone applauds your commitment. Sometimes it erodes under the weight of expectations, roles, and unspoken rules about what a marriage should look like. And when that happens, the pain feels confusing, because there is no villain to blame. I spent years believing that if I just tried harder, everything would improve. More patience, more sacrifice, more understanding. I told myself that enduring discomfort was a sign of maturity, but what I didn't realize was that endurance without connection slowly turns into resentment, even when no one wants it to. The truth I uncovered later was unsettling because it challenged everything I believed about love. Love alone isn't enough if it exists without communication. Commitment isn't healing if it requires self-erasure. And silence, when prolonged, doesn't protect relationships, it slowly dismantles them. This kind of heartbreak teaches you how fragile emotional bonds really are. Not because people are careless, but because they are overwhelmed, conditioned, and afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of change, afraid of admitting that something precious is slipping away. I began to understand that losing yourself doesn't happen in one decision. It happens through a series of small compromises. You bite your tongue. You postpone conversations. You accept less than you need because it feels easier than risking discomfort. Over time, those choices reshape who you are. There is grief in realizing that the person you once were, the hopeful, expressive, emotionally open version of yourself, has gone quiet. And that grief is complicated because no one else can see it. To the world, you are still married, still functioning, still fine. Heartbreak in silence feels invalidated. You question whether you have the right to feel this way. After all, nothing terrible has happened. But emotional absence can wound just as deeply as emotional cruelty. It just leaves fewer visible scars. I started to see how many people around me were living similar stories. Couples together for decades, bonded by habit rather than intimacy. Smiles that felt practiced. Conversations that stayed safely superficial. It made me realize this wasn't just my pain, it was a pattern. This heartbreak forced me to confront an uncomfortable question. How long can a person stay somewhere they feel unseen before they disappear entirely? And perhaps more importantly, why do we so often choose familiarity over emotional truth? Sometimes the deepest pain isn't losing someone to distance or conflict. It's losing yourself while standing still. It's waking up one day and realizing that in trying so hard to keep a relationship intact, you slowly let go of your own voice. This story begins here not with an ending, but with a realization. A realization that heartbreak doesn't always look the way we expect. And that sometimes, the most courageous thing a person can do is finally admit that silence has been hurting them all along.